Hi everyone, it's Renee with Delaney Jane Cards. Welcome back to my channel. Today is day 2 of the Clair Designs May 2020 stamp release, and this is Spring Florals. And what I did there is printed out the entire thing, and then I cut it apart and just printed out these daffodils, made them much bigger, and then cut them out with my silhouette. I was just showing you that I used the registration points so that I can put that on a mat and run it through my silhouette, and I'll be able to cut those out using my silhouette software. So here I did die cut 2 of them. I wasn't sure exactly how this card was going to come together, but I wanted to make sure I had plenty to work with because I really haven't colored daffodils before. So I Google searched and I found some daffodils. Not just yellow daffodils would be kind of boring, and I mean they're pretty, but I really wanted to color these, the white petals on the outside and that yellow like trumpet in the middle. That like really distinguishing feature of daffodils is that yellow trumpet. So I decided to color the white with some blue greens. I know that seems really funny, but there is shadow in everything. There's shadow in white things. There's shadow in clear things. There's shadow in everything. I wanted to use a more natural color. If you look at my picture there on my phone, you can see that there's a lot of different colors going on in that white. So what I did is some BG 93 and 90, I believe, and I put the strokes in, and I also separated the petals where I seen in the picture that it showed me that the petals were separate all the way to that like trumpet in the center. I didn't need to add a black line there, I didn't think. These are drawn gorgeous. They're gorgeous and they're super fun, and this image is really kind of tiny. Now, this is one super neat thing about digital images is I can make it any size I want. And I made it A2 size because I wanted to absolutely feature it on the front of a card. So here I have the white part done, and then I decided that I was going to color the little trumpet part, and I kept going back to my phone. I wanted to see exactly how this should look. And when I looked at it, it showed me that there was like these lines in this trumpet. It wasn't smooth. So I took this Y17 and I really drew these lines in. And then I toned down the yellow with the Y26 to make it a more earthy tone. And then I did my shading again with the Y17. I wanted that deeper, darker tone down inside the trumpet. And I didn't have quite the contrast that I wanted. So I did bring in another marker here. Oh, here I'm doing the fluted edge. I'm adding little tiny triangles where that dips in every time, and I'm using the Y17 and then bringing in the Y26 to dull it down, blending it back out with the Y17, and then I will fill that back in with my Y02, which is what I'm using there as my bright yellow. Yellows, it's hard to get contrast sometimes, and you'll see here that, I mean, there's contrast, but it's not nearly what I was looking for. So I do bring in, see, I tried to make that deeper and darker, and I just couldn't get it with that. So I brought in the YR27, and it immediately adds so much to that coloring. It adds so much shape and dimension to that trumpet in the center of that daffodil. I was so excited that's what I got there. And then I was checking to see what I think those are stamens, what those look like, and they are also a yellow, golden yellow color. I just made sure that I, focused on the shading and used the very tip of the marker, and added the shading where I wanted it so that I could get the highlight on the end that kind of stuck out beyond that trumpet. I figured the sun was shining on this and that wouldn't be hiding for long. So here I just finished up the trumpet, and then I added the yellow to the petals. Now this is kind of washed out on my screen here, but you'll see when we get back overhead that yellow is really in there. I just blended out those two really light yellows to add more tone to the petals. And then I pulled my phone back in to figure out what green color I wanted to use for the foliage, the stems and the leaves that are around the flowers here. And I used G24. I filled in all the spots. Normally, I probably wouldn't do that, but when I was looking at this image, I was struggling with what was and what wasn't a leaf or a stem. So I figured if I just filled it in with the solid layer first, I would know exactly where I'm coloring. And like there's that little tiny piece on the other daffodil there between the two petals that you see the green that I would have probably missed if I hadn't been paying attention. So I put shading on the edges of the leaves, kind of in that little dip. It's drawn with that little like dip in the leaf, and then where they attach to the stem. And then I did add shading to the edges of the stems and where the stems overlap. And I went all the way lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest, simply because I had to fill them in first. Otherwise, I probably would have started with the darkest. This green combination blends super nicely, so I wouldn't have needed to really work at it much, but it blended nice and it was fine. I enjoy coloring, so adding more coloring is not a big deal. And I really do love how these turned out. I think they turn out beautiful, and I'm glad I pulled my phone out to Google the image to get the actual inspiration. I do that a lot. Sometimes I show it on my videos, sometimes I don't. But a lot of times I do pull in some kind of something on my phone just so I can see how the light looks on it or what colors I should be using. So I colored the other flower exactly the same off screen there, and then I pulled in this die by Sunny Studios. It has an outer frame die and then an inner die that just cuts out the pattern. So I taped those together with my removable Scotch tape so that I had an equal border all the way around, and I die cut a piece of purple cardstock with that die like that. And then I pushed out all the little pieces. I have this like, I think it's a Sizzix brush, no, Spellbinders, and I pushed them all out, and I had to use my pokey tool to get some of them too. And then I took the center out of that die and I just die cut the actual shape out of 2 pieces of white cardstock. I wanted to add a little bit of dimension, and the white will shine through that pattern that has come and been poked out of the center there. And it's got like a floral pattern, a quilted floral pattern. You can really see it once I put it down on the white. It's so pretty. And then there was like one little piece that I forgot or missed. So then I was trying to figure out my layout here, and I really wanted, okay, so the yellow and the purple, they pop together. Like that yellow just jumps right off the page. But I also had that piece of orange, which is kind of the shadow color, and wanted to use that. So I decided on like a natural color, more like a craft, and that orange, and I matted those together with a thin little border, and then I used some thread to tie a knot here. I wrapped it around several times and made like a loopy knot. I did cut myself with thread. It's just sharp. It's like outside thread and it's sharp. And then I adhered down my floral right over that thread layer and put it in there just how I wanted it. And I added this feel better sentiment, and I did cut that out with my silhouette when I cut out the flowers. I just didn't want like a label. I thought that it would be nice to have like a pretty border around it, so I cut it out like that. And then I pulled out these pretty pink posh sequins here, and I added some black ones. I thought that it would tie in the black thread and the black outline to the flowers. I really love these flowers. If you are looking for a floral stamp set to practice coloring, and you want to spend like just a couple dollars, and you want to be able to make them as big or as small as you want, this stamp set is a good one. I print mine on an HP like inkjet printer. Inkjet, is that right? Yeah. And I don't have any trouble with smearing or smudging. You've seen I used some really light colors there, and I didn't have any trouble at all. I print right on my Nina 80-pound cardstock. I can send that right through my HP printer. I don't like my printer, but it does work well for this. So after I adhered those where I wanted them to, I adhered this decorative edged panel to my layers in the back there. And you can see how that just frames up my floral image so nicely. I think it just made it jump right off the page, and it added that orange. And then I pulled out something I never ever use, my Wink Stella. I've had it forever and a day. Normally I reach for my Spectrum Noir because it's more of a cool glitter. This one has kind of a golden tone to it, but this was a perfect image for that because I was looking at that golden tone. Excuse me. Now I will pull in my flashlight and shine it on the flowers here so you can kind of see that shimmer that I added. It's subtle, but it's there and it's super pretty. And I think anybody that needs a Feel Better card will appreciate that there is a tiny little bit of additional detail there on the flowers. So I added this to a panel. This is some Michael's cardstock, Recollections 110-pound cardstock. I never can cut it straight, so I always end up having to trim off after I add my card panel. It is what it is. It's very inexpensive cardstock and it's nice and thick, and I do like that. So I did add just a little tiny drop of glue underneath my bow there. I wanted to make sure that it doesn't come unraveled, and this way it's all tied together. So here you can see that glitter sparkle on the flowers. I think they turned out so pretty. This video here is also attached to a coordinating blog post. That blog post is part of a blog hop. There are giveaways and prizes. I'll have that linked below. And I really would love to know what you think of my card. I also wanted to know if you hit the subscribe button. I would appreciate it if you did. And as I always say, give cards generously. Bye.